Once upon a time, in northern India, a herd of deer lived near a village. They were accustomed to being close to people, having been born and raised in the area. The deer knew they had to be extremely cautious, especially during harvest season when crops were tall, and farmers set traps to protect their fields. During this time, the village deer would stay hidden in the forest throughout the day and only venture near the village under the cover of night. Among them was a beautiful young doe with soft reddish-brown fur, a fluffy white tail, and big, bright eyes. In the same low forest, a young mountain buck had wandered in from the hills. One day, he caught sight of the pretty doe and was instantly smitten. He didn't know anything about her, but her appearance captivated him. He imagined himself deeply in love with her, enchanted by her fur, tail, and eyes. He even dreamed about her, though she was unaware of his existence. After a few days, the young buck gathered his courage to approach her. As he stepped into the clearing where she was grazing, he was so entranced by her beauty that he couldn't take his eyes off her. He began to speak. "Oh, my sweet beauty, as lovely as the stars and as bright as the moon, I must confess." But just as he was speaking, his hoof caught on a root, and he tripped, landing face first in a mud puddle. The doe, amused by the clumsy buck, smiled but thought to herself how silly he was. Unbeknownst to the deer, a clan of tree fairies lived in that part of the forest. They had been watching the young buck as he admired the doe from afar. When they saw him trip and fall, they burst into laughter. "What fools these animals can be!" they exclaimed. But one fairy, more thoughtful than the others, said, "I fear this is a sign of danger for this young fool." Though embarrassed, the young buck didn't see this as a warning. From that day on, he followed the doe wherever she went, constantly praising her beauty and professing his love. The doe, though flattered, paid little attention to him. Night fell, and it was time for the doe to make her way to the village. The villagers, aware that deer often pass by at night, had set traps to catch them, and a hunter was waiting in hiding. The doe, cautious by nature, began her journey. The infatuated buck, still singing her praises, followed her closely. The doe stopped and turned to him, saying, "Dear buck, you don't know how dangerous humans can be. The village and the path to it are full of deadly traps, especially for an inexperienced deer like you. You should stay in the safety of the forest." The tree fairies, who had been watching, applauded her wise words, but of course, the deer couldn't hear them. The young buck, blinded by infatuation, ignored the doe's warning. "Your eyes are so lovely in the moonlight," he said, continuing to follow her. The doe, sensing the danger ahead, sighed and said, "If you won't listen to me, at least be quiet." Finally, the buck fell silent, but didn't stop following her. As they approached the place where the hunter lay in wait, the doe smelled the scent of the hidden man. Fearing a trap, she decided to let the buck go ahead while she followed at a distance. The hunter, spotting the unsuspecting mountain buck, swiftly drew his bow and shot an arrow, killing the buck instantly. The doe, terrified, turned and fled back to the safety of the forest. The hunter claimed his kill, started a fire, and cooked some of the venison. After eating his fill, he carried the rest of the buck's carcass back to his family. The tree fairies, who had witnessed the scene, were filled with sorrow. Some cried as they watched the once noble-looking buck being skinned and butchered. Others blamed the cautious doe for leading him to his doom. But the wise fairy who had first warned of danger said, "It was the blindness of infatuation that led this foolish deer to his end." Such unthinking desire may bring momentary happiness, but it ultimately ends in pain and suffering. The moral of the story: infatuation can lead to destruction.